If you're like me, vinyl records mean a lot to you. From sound to visuals to tangibility, it's an unmatched experience in today's scroll and click culture. And if it means a lot to you and I, imagine what it means to those who've put their own music to wax through the years.
There really is something pretty profound about holding a piece of vinyl that has your music on it for the first time.
I'm Jim Hankey, host and producer of Vinyl Emergency, a podcast where your favorite songwriters, producers, and other personalities talk about how the mere existence of vinyl has influenced their lives and careers. People like Roseanne Cash, Oscar nominee Michael Shannon, Hozier.
I remember falling in love with Howlin' Wolf's The London Sessions.
Adam Duritz, Ben Gibbard, Lisa Loeb.
As I was going through my records, I didn't realize I forgot I had Andy Warhol sign it.
Plus members of REM, Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers, Run DMC, and more.
The arts succeeds where politics and religion fail.
Vinyl is more than just the music that's on it. It's also the memories, legends, and science that made it in the first place.
Streaming will never kill the true record maker. You can't stop thinking side one and side two, even if the world doesn't care. It's in their blood.
Find Vinyl Emergency on your preferred podcast app today and give us a follow on Instagram at Vinyl Emergency.
Hey everyone, welcome to the Safe and Sound podcast. I'm your host, Jeremy Houtsma, licensed mental health counselor. My guest today is Dan Weyandt, lead vocalist and principal screamer for the almighty ZAO. This podcast episode is going to be a little different. If you were looking for a history of the band or Dan's views on the band, there are a lot of other podcasts out there that cover that with Dan. Instead, Dan and I cover his mental health struggles throughout his life, including extreme anxiety, obsessive compulsive disorder, and how EMDR, a trauma therapy, saved his life. This is Dan as a musician, human being, and a fellow anxiety buddy. This interview encapsulates so much of what this podcast is about. Hope you enjoy it. How you doing? It's afternoon for you, right?
Yeah. Yeah, it's like a little after 1. I just squeaked in here.
Nice. Where are you at? Your house or?
I'm at work.
Okay. Where do you work at?
For about the past 5 years, a little over 5 years, I've tattooed out of a private studio.
Oh, nice.
It's like right down the street from my house.
Sweet.
So yeah, no one's here. I didn't schedule any appointments today, so.
Yeah, thanks for I don't know if you specifically did it for me, but if I'm glad we could get this time together.
I usually try to do like on Mondays, I'll work sometimes it's like prep for the week.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like try to approach things as stress-free as possible.
Yeah.
Thought today would be like that, man. It was just nuts. It was like nothing specific, like just like weird. You know what I mean? Like
yeah. Sometimes you just have those days. Yeah.
Yeah. I just bizarre. I was gonna make lunch for me and my wife, and then part of it was I had in a bag like some meat and stuff and this goat cheese, and then one of the meat leaked all over the goat cheese, so I took me like a half an hour to wash everything, like that type of stuff. Man. I was like, I'm like, this will be fast, and then like just a lot of road bumps, nothing crazy though.
Yeah, hopefully it's not a Murphy's Law situation today. So my internet sometimes like bounces out for no reason, so hopefully don't curse us, Dan.
Mine's okay.
Cool.
Mine's usually pretty decent.
So do you rent a chair, or do you rent, like, is the studio owned by you, or
it's just like where I live, it's not like fully rural, but it's like getting there.
Yeah.
So like out by where I live, like spaces aren't that crazy to, you know what I mean, like rent things. So I just I rent a place. It's probably like a minute and a half from my house.
Okay. Is it just you in the studio, or?
Yeah. I've worked alone for 5 years.
Oh wow.
It's actually called the Lone Oni.
Nice.
So it's a long story. That name is like it was a long way to get there. But
how long you been tattooing for?
A little over 30 years.
Wow.
About 30 years.
Okay.
Now, there were times when I was younger where ZAO was out on the road like 8 months a year. You
Yeah.
know what I mean? Like early 2000s and like late 90s to like mid 2000s. But so I could probably shave a few years off as far as, you know what I mean? But technically,
Yeah.
um, like around about 30 years ago, I started my apprenticeship, I should say. So maybe more like 28 years.
Yeah. What did that look like? Who'd you start with?
I was apprenticed by a guy named Tom Cinnamond in a town called Greensburg. It was cool, man. I bugged him for like a year and a half.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Wasn't now it's you can get supplies and it's like back in the late 90s, it was you had to almost have someone take you under their wing.
Yeah.
So just to learn the craft. I still think it's a good idea to be an apprentice, but I feel like you can skip it pretty easy these days between, can get supplies were like gate kept back when I started. Like you would call a supply company and they would double check that you like worked at a shop or a professional, you know what I mean? And if you weren't, it was hard to get supplies. And then even just the information. I mean, I'm not saying everything on YouTube is perfect, but you can get a lot more information roughly than you could back then, you know?
Sure. Yeah. I think some of it probably has to do with your style of learning something, right? Like, I can't sit down and watch a YouTube video for like 20, like that is just not my style. I need to have somebody kind of like teach me how to do something, you know?
Yeah, I'm kind of the same way.
Yeah. So what kind of style did you start out in?
The guy that taught me, I would say without lack of a better whatever, was guy apprentice under was like leaning towards more like what's they now call like new school, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then I was apprentice under him, worked for about 5 or 6 years, and then I went to another shop. Shop I had started at was owned by a couple, and they split up a couple years into my career. And then the guy that taught me left, and then a few years later, I left the shop as well. And but then the next shop I went to was like a full traditional street shop. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I got to kind of learn both ends of things, and then not only that, but I learned full color. And then the next shop I went to was actually a lot of black and gray. So it was cool. I got to like learn a lot of different styles from people that were proficient in them, I guess. You know?
So what kind of music were you listening to when you were a kid? Was that like, what did you discover, or who were you kind of like attracted to musically?
I would say up to a certain age, it was just whatever people would show me. I always liked music. I was drawn to it, from an early age. I remember just hearing like hooks and just wanting to listen to it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then it was just this and that. I had a stepbrother, and he was into like metal. And so when I was young, I was like, he was listening to stuff like, Metallica and Guns N' Roses and Danzig and things like that, which I thought was cool, and it definitely had an impact on me. But I would say the first stuff I heard, when I was 13, I was skating and I met like a couple kids at like a playground, you know what I mean? They were like, I had a launch ramp there, and it was like, they were older and I was just like standing there watching.
If you're like me, vinyl records mean a lot to you. From sound to visuals to tangibility, it's an unmatched experience in today's scroll and click culture. And if it means a lot to you and I, imagine what it means to those who've put their own music to wax through the years.
There really is something pretty profound about holding a piece of vinyl that has your music on it for the first time.
I'm Jim Hankey, host and producer of Vinyl Emergency, a podcast where your favorite songwriters, producers, and other personalities talk about how the mere existence of vinyl has influenced their lives and careers. People like Roseanne Cash, Oscar nominee Michael Shannon, Hozier.
I remember falling in love with Howlin' Wolf's The London Sessions.
Adam Duritz, Ben Gibbard, Lisa Loeb.
As I was going through my records, I didn't realize I forgot I had Andy Warhol sign it.
Plus members of REM, Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers, Run DMC, and more.
The arts succeeds where politics and religion fails.
Vinyl is more than just the music that's on it. It's also the memories, legends, and science that made it in the first place.
Streaming will never kill the true record maker. You can't stop thinking side one and side two, even if the world doesn't care. It's in their blood.
Find Vinyl Emergency on your preferred podcast app today and give us a follow on Instagram at Vinyl Emergency.
Hey everyone, welcome to the Safe and Sound podcast. I'm your host, Jeremy Houtsma, licensed mental health counselor. My guest today is Dan Weyandt, lead vocalist and principal screamer for the almighty ZAO. This podcast episode is going to be a little different. If you are looking for a history of the band or Dan's views on the band, there are a lot of other podcasts out there that cover that with Dan. Instead, Dan and I cover his mental health struggles throughout his life, including extreme anxiety, obsessive compulsive disorder, and how EMDR, a trauma therapy, saved his life. This is Dan as a musician, human being, and a fellow anxiety buddy. This interview encapsulates so much of what this podcast is about. Hope you enjoy it. How you doing? It's afternoon for you, right?
Yeah. Yeah, it's like a little after 1. I just squeaked in here.
Nice. Where are you at? Your house or?
At my work.
Okay. Where do you work at?
For about the past 5 years, a little over 5 years, I've tattooed out of a private studio.
Oh, nice.
It's like right down the street from my house.
Sweet.
So yeah, no one's here. I didn't schedule any appointments today, so.
Yeah, thanks for I don't know if you specifically did it for me, but if I'm glad we could get this time together.
I usually try to do like on Mondays, I'll work sometimes it's like prep for the week.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like try to approach things as stress-free as possible.
Yeah.
Thought today would be like that, man, and it was just nuts. It was like nothing specific, like just like weird. You know what I mean? Like
yeah. Sometimes you just have those days. Yeah.
Yeah. I just bizarre. I was gonna make lunch for me and my wife, and then part of it was I had in a bag like some meat and stuff and this goat cheese, and then one of the meat leaked all over the goat cheese, so took me like a half an hour to wash everything, like that type of stuff. Man, I was like I'm like, this will be fast, and then like just a lot of road bumps, nothing crazy though.
Yeah, hopefully it's not a Murphy's Law situation today. So my internet sometimes like bounces out for no reason, so hopefully don't curse us, Dan.
Mine's okay.
Cool.
Mine's usually pretty decent.
So do you rent a chair, or do you rent, like, is the studio owned by you, or
it's just like where I live, it's not like fully rural, but it's like getting there.
Yeah.
So like out by where I live, like spaces aren't that crazy to, you know what I mean, like rent things. So I just I rent a place. It's probably like a minute and a half from my house.
Okay. Is it just you in the studio, or?
Yeah. I've worked alone for 5 years.
Oh wow.
It's actually called the Lone Oni. So
nice.
I just by myself. It's a long story. That name was it was a long way to get there, but.
How long you been tattooing for?
A little over 30 years.
Wow.
About 30 years.
Okay.
Now, there were times when I was younger where ZAO was out on the road like 8 months a year. You know what I mean? Like early 2000s and like late 90s through like mid 2000s. But so I could probably shave a few years off as far as, you know what I mean? But technically, like around about 30 years ago, I started my apprenticeship, I should say. So maybe more like 28 years.
Yeah. What did that look like? Who'd you start with?
I was apprenticed by a guy named Tom Cinnamond in a town called Greensburg. It was cool, man. I bugged him for like a year and a half.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Now you can get supplies, and it's like back in the late 90s, it was you had to almost have someone take you under their wing.
Yeah.
So just to learn the craft. I still think it's a good idea to be an apprentice, but I feel like you can skip it pretty easy these days between, you can get supplies were like gate kept back when I started. Like you would call a supply company and they would double check that you like worked at a shop or a professional, you know what I mean? And if you weren't, it was hard to get supplies. And then even just the information. I mean, not saying everything on YouTube is perfect, but you can get a lot more information roughly than you could back then, you know?
Sure. Yeah. I think some of it probably has to do with your style of learning something, right? Like
Yeah.
I
Mhm.
can't sit down and watch a YouTube video for like 20, like that is just not my style. I need to have
Yeah,
somebody kind of like teach me how to do something, you know?
yeah, I'm kind of the same way.
Yeah.
So
So what kind of style did you start out in?
the guy that taught me, I would say, without lack of a better whatever, was guy I apprenticed under was like leaned towards more like what's they now call like new school. You know what
Okay.
I mean?
Yeah.
And then I was apprenticed under him, worked for about 5 or 6 years, and then I went to another shop I had started at was owned by a couple, and they split up a couple years into my uh, career. And then the guy that taught me left, and then a few years later, I left the shop as well. And but then the next shop I went to was like a full traditional street shop. You know
Sure.
what I mean?
Yeah.
And
Yeah. Yeah.
so I got to kind of learn both ends of things. And then not only that, but I learned full color. And then the next shop I went to was actually a lot of black and gray. So it was cool. I got to like learn a lot of different styles from people that were proficient in them, I
Yeah.
guess, you know.
So what kind of music were you listening to when you were a kid? Was that like, what did you discover, or who were you kind of like attracted to musically?
I would say up to a certain age, it was just whatever people would show me. I always liked music. I was drawn to it, you know, from an early age. I remember just hearing like hooks and just wanting to listen to it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then it was just this and that. I had a stepbrother, and he was into like metal. And so when I was young, you know, I was like, I was listening to stuff like, you know, Metallica and Guns N' Roses and Danzig and things like that, which I thought was cool, you know, and it definitely had an impact on me. But I would say the first stuff I heard, when I was 13, I was skating and I met like a couple kids at like a playground. You know what I mean? They were like, they
Yeah.
had a launch ramp there, and it was like, they were older, and I was just like standing there watching, and they're like, hey man, come hang out. And it ended up being a couple guys I ended up being friends with, really good friends with. And there, one guy's name is Chris. He was about 3, 4 years older than me. So I was like 13, he was like 16, 17. And yeah, man, that was the guy that really started showing me, you know. But the first band I remember, he would show me like he was more into like punk
Sure.
stuff. But the first record that like blew my mind, I think, when I was like young was Black Flag Damaged,
Mhm.
because it was a guy talking about depression and
Yeah.
anxiety and like self-loathing. And it was you know, the first time I ever heard like someone honestly speak about these things. And that's when I realized the power of music in the
Yeah.
sense of connection and drawing strength from it, and the feeling of connecting maybe with someone you've never met through their lyrics. Or at least that was like, got off listening to a lot of like, got into like Black Flag and like Misfits and things like that. And which, you know, that band wasn't very like personal. But then just some of like, there was a local band called Half Life, and that from Pittsburgh, like a punk band, and just slowly started. That's when I realized, like, I really started looking around and realized that music, you know, was powerful, and it made me hungry to like find new music. And back in the day, like skate videos,
Yeah.
you buy a skate video and go through it, and you know, like, man, that was like the first time I heard like old Green Day, or like, and you know what I mean, stuff like that. And I liked hip hop stuff too, so it was like, and then and like some of the I don't even really know what you would call bands like Game Face and things like that, you know what I mean? And started
Yeah.
like Seaweed and things like that. And then it was like just made friends and got introduced to more and more music. And then the guy that introduced me to like Black Flag and stuff, he was the one that was like started playing me like hardcore stuff too. And a lot of it was like old straight edge stuff, like anything from like Minor Threat to like Chain of Strength, Youth of Today,
Yeah. Yeah.
like
Yeah.
all that type of stuff, Slapshot, you know. And then that was like the early where I started being like, oh, like hardcore is a thing, and like, you know, SSD Control, you know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
And I even back then liked all of it, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know? And then I met another friend, and he's the one that turned me on to like Morbid Angel and you know what I mean, Obituary and things like that. And and then Napalm Death, you know what I mean. So it was cool. Just like
Was that kind of stuff connecting with you emotionally, or was it like what they were talking about, or just what they were kind of
uh,
representing?
I feel like things say like Black Flag, where they were specifically talking about, you know, like maybe like specific ways they felt, I would connect with that. And sometimes I would just connect with like the anger or the desperation of certain bands.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? It wasn't necessarily like, say, a band like Morbid Angel per se. I was kind of like, I could take or leave the lyrics. You know what I
Sure.
mean?
Sure.
And I don't mean that from a whatever. I mean that with like to this day with any, whatever. It's I guess if you don't, sometimes it was like if you didn't read the lyrics, you really didn't even have to worry about it
Right.
anyway.
Right.
You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Um, uh, but in that place, I would just connect with like, yeah, the brutality of it or the anger of it. You know what I mean? Or things
Yeah.
like that. And
Yeah.
I feel like I'm still like that to this day a little bit. Some stuff I like for like lyrical content, and then there's stuff I just like because it's, the music. And I actually like, I'd say like heavy wise these days, maybe only like 20 or 30% of the music I listen to is, heavy, I guess.
Yeah.
Like, probably in my like mid to late 40s, I really started working on myself a lot and realized that music was a big part of my mood and my like mental state. You know what I mean? So I
Yeah.
started like going towards things more that would, keep me calm or like, you know, uh, not enriching, but put my, kind of turn my focus to not positive thing. That's the one weird thing. It was there's a few bands I like, but I was never like a positive music guy. You know what I mean? I was like,
PMA, some positive mental
yeah,
attitude. Yeah.
I have nothing against it. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
But there's like maybe like a handful of bands that are like that were really positive that I could like really get behind. Um, One of them being Sensefield, the
Yeah.
album Building. It's probably one of the, like my favorite. And when he passed, man, that really hit me hard.
Yeah.
Just John.
Just out of curiosity, did you have a name to what you were going through when you were younger? Like, did you know this is anxiety or this is depression or?
Actually, a funny story, not a funny story, but first off, I had anxiety since my like earliest memories. Like one of my first memories I ever had was like kind of like seeing a plane in the sky, you know what I mean? And being like, whoa. And then I got really upset and I had to go in the house because I didn't understand what was keeping it in the sky. And my first thought was it's going to fall on me or in my neighborhood and like harm me or people I care about. So, my mind was like, from my earliest memories, was already kind of like in like some sort of crisis mode. And then when I was younger, I had a lot of anger problems. There was 2 times in school I had to complete an anger therapy regimen before I was allowed to go to the next grade. I didn't really understand what anxiety was, though. I just thought I was just a worrier, I guess. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I had like a generalized anxiety my whole life, but never started having attacks until like right after 11th grade, where I was actually experiencing like, not physical symptoms, but you know what I mean?
Yeah.
For lack of a better word. And the crazy thing about it, and what made it so hard, was like my mom's taking me to all these doctors and stuff, and every single one of them's like, we have no idea what's wrong with you. Which makes it even scarier.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
Because then you start thinking like maybe you have something wrong with you that's like one of those things where they're going to name a disease after me. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like Lou
Yeah.
Gehrig or something. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
oh, it's Dan Weyandt syndrome. You know what I mean? Or something like that.
What were you experiencing?
My mind just reels towards like negativity, like anytime, and it's. I've learned to work with it. I did about a decade on medicine, and then actually, what was able to get me off it, I had a lot of success with EMDR therapy.
Yeah.
More than anything therapy I've ever done in my life. Prior to that, I was on like Prozac and Xanax and all these things for a long time, but they helped me to keep it together enough to keep going, I guess. But But yeah, I was like, when I was older, about 11th grade, it took 2 or 3 years. I was calling, I was going to all these doctors, I was going to psychiatrists, psychologists, all these people. And a lot of them would just kind of say, you worry too much. And, you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah, yeah.
yes, I know. I'm
Thanks.
well aware.
Yeah.
Thanks. And
No
then I
shit,
call,
Sherlock.
there was a woman that had an ad in the paper. And I'll never forget this day. I was probably like 21, and I called, and she said she answered herself. She just had a small like talk therapist practice, and I said I would like to make an appointment, and she said, "Why would what's
What's
what?"
the deal? Yeah, what's going on?
Yeah. So and I started to explain what was wrong, and then she said, "Well, when this happens, does this happen?" And I said, "Yes." And it was the first time anyone ever started like, "Well, I feel this. What is it?" I'm like, "This is the first time I feel like anyone's whatever." And then I went in to see her. She's like, "You have an anxiety disorder." And it was crazy because she did more for me on the phone, in like
Yeah.
3 minutes than years of sitting with, even up to psychiatrists. I actually went to see a neurologist once, even like just because my mom was just like, felt terrible. Looking back, I feel terrible for her. She had no idea what to do, and
Right.
everything she did didn't help. Not because of her lack of trying, but it was just the state of how it was back in that day. It's crazy because now it's like, boom, you know what I mean? People
Yeah.
like anxiety, and it's like, man, I think what set me up for a lot of whatever was in that kind of transitional period of like into adulthood, like 17, 18, into my 20s. I was in like a really bad place, and then there was no help. You know
Yeah.
what I mean?
Yeah.
That's also, and I had like initially got into the band and everything too, and I think that's why those, just first record or two I was involved with kind of had so much kind of, whatever behind them, as I was just in a terrible place,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know. And I found a big outlet in playing music, not only listening to it, but eventually being able to play it,
Absolutely. Yeah.
you know. And that's what I always would say is, for all the stuff with ZAO, a lot of times I did it because it was very cathartic for me. You know what I
Absolutely.
mean?
100%.
And it
Yeah.
was a big, it was a great outlet. You know what I mean? And I was, like sincerely, and it went from anxiety. I mean, I still struggle with it. I just, and it has its days, but like, I feel like it used to be on top of me, and now I'm on top of it, if that makes any
Yeah.
sense. You know what I mean? It's
Absolutely.
still there.
Yeah.
We're still like wrestling. I just have a little bit better of a position. You know
Yeah.
what I mean?
Yeah.
But and I've also, just to go back, I've also in the past year or so realized that I have pretty intense ADHD. I don't feel like a hyper person, so I
Yeah.
always like wrote it off. And then actually my brother was actually seeing a doctor about it, and then like relating to me, like, because we're very similar in our mental setups. He went through and felt a lot of the same things I did. And we were always close because he was always the only other person I knew that felt the way I felt, and we had the same not all the same circumstances, but we're able to, relate to each other and things like that a lot. And then I started looking into it, and I was like, wait, you don't have like 15 people talking to you at once all the time in your head?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
like, you don't
Yeah.
forget what you're doing every 5 minutes, and
Right.
things like that, and um, I haven't made a lot of steps yet to whatever. I'm at a point where I'm not really interested in medicine and stuff. So if anything, like, some behavioral therapy or something. So I was going to give like some online stuff a try and see if it helped at all. And, but yeah, no, that's been my newest, kind of thing to go down. I have a friend or two that I see, and we joke about it. I have it all, I get
Yeah.
we used to always call it the Trinity. It was like
Yeah.
anxiety.
Like you said, yeah. Depression.
And that would eventually, like, I would, I'd get depressed because I couldn't get out from under it. And then I would kind of like lean into depression and like shut the world out and people I cared about a bit. And then I would get angry at myself for doing that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And then I would go through an anger phase. And then every once in a while I get a day or two where I feel okay. And then we go back to anxiety,
Yeah.
And then I have like kind of a stream of constant ADHD throughout that,
Right. That's going through your head all the time. Yeah.
And like you were saying about the parenting thing, I was just reading about that because it's like, especially by the time the evening comes, I'm so mentally worn down from my brain not shutting off that maybe something, like someone saying why, or something like that, you can be kind of to the point where you don't have any like defense left. Do you know what I mean?
No,
And
absolutely. You don't have anything in the well to kind of like
yeah,
quell yourself or, whatever kind of, when I started to learn about, I think just being overwhelmed and my nervous system being overwhelmed, right? I think with trauma and anxiety, your nervous system is kind of up here a lot of the time. And, it took me, when I was, just going back a little bit, when I was, I can relate a lot to what you're saying. When I was like 8 or 9, I started showing signs of obsessive compulsive disorder, but my parents had no idea what was going on. I had this instance where like I became really anxious and I threw up, and right before school, and then I gained this fear of throwing up all the time, and my parents were like, what's the deal, and I was like, well, my throat closes and I feel like super anxious, and they were taking me to doctors, and I was having intrusive thoughts, like really, really disgusting intrusive thoughts. And I thought something was wrong with me, right? I'm like, if I say this stuff out loud, they might put me away. Like that was, that was like my fear, and they took me to a psychiatrist, and I'm like terrified because I'm just like, are they gonna commit me to a mental institution? Because they were violent thoughts, they were sexual thoughts, they were all these things. And he was like, you have OCD. And I was like, what does that mean? But just them being able to put a name to something, right? Just felt, okay, I can breathe a little bit. I'm not crazy. I'm not, that type of thing. But OCD, ADHD, anxiety all mingle together, right?
Yep, I have all kinds of. I have a lot of fun with that too. Mine. I actually have a thing where when I was really little, I woke up throwing up. My parents were still together, so I had to be like under 3.5.
Yeah.
And I woke up throwing up, and I couldn't stop. And then I had a fear of aspiration for a long time, because I was like, what if, I thought at first I was going to suffocate. I was like, what if I can't stop? And then I didn't learn. And then when I was older and learned about, you can actually aspirate, but my OCD, I have a lot of like ritual stuff that I have to do, or I feel that someone I care about will get hurt. It's not even like about me really. And then so I'll be like, well, I have to get dressed the same way, or like, and then it's like, well, what if today I do it differently? And then I have to sit there for the rest of my life and be like, one of my kids or my wife was in and out, you know what I mean?
Right,
and then I was very germophobic, and I still am, bad. And that was a big battle when I had kids.
Sure.
You know what I mean? I have this memory of laying in bed. My daughter was probably like 2 or 3, and she started preschool, maybe like more towards 3, 4. And like, I was one of those people when I was younger, if you were sick, I'd literally be like, don't come anywhere near me, please.
Right.
I was almost like very like, and I remember we had her lay in our bed with us because she had a lot of congestion, and we were trying to get her to sleep sitting up, so we're kind of like letting her lay with us and kind of wedge her between us with some pillows, trying to keep her a bit upright. And I'm laying there in the dark, and I feel just a boogery finger slowly go down my face, like over my, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I was just like, had that like, type of like feeling. And then I got a little better about that. But I had like weird stuff about if my germophobia will hurt. So a lot of my stuff's like, my fear is like causing harm to somebody else.
Sure.
Like for instance, today I literally had these packs of goat cheese, and they had like pork juice all over them.
Sure.
You know what I mean? From in a bag, and I was obsessively cleaning them out of the fear that there's some sort of like salmonella or parasite on that. And if I don't clean it perfectly, it could get on the cheese when I open it, and then I could make, my wife sick or myself sick,
Yeah.
And I was literally like, it took me half an hour. It was like I got here 1 minute before we started this because I was at home like,
Yeah, dude. I mean, honestly, if like every day is kind of a battle for me. So even 2 years ago, I basically had a nervous breakdown, and I almost put myself into the hospital because my nervous system just broke, and I was like having panic attacks, and I was shaking, and I was, just freaking out. And I'm a therapist too, right? So there's all this like shame that's coming on that I'm like, oh, I'm supposed to be working with people who deal with this, and I'm freaking out, you know? And because of that, my OCD flared, and it became around having another panic attack and like freaking me out. Like even before this, I go through a ritual in the shower, and I was like, I can't be late. Like I have to like count things or count steps or like things like that, and it's always constantly going in your mind. And I think the thing that like, there's if you don't experience what OCD is, like you just don't understand it, right? And there's kind
I
of this
agree.
like this pop culture thing of like, oh, OCD means this or OCD means that. And I was like, if you like, I remember very specifically, I was on the Jersey shore, and like I had to step certain ways or else something would happen, right? And I froze. I literally froze in the middle of the Jersey shore. And my parents were like, "Come on!" And I was like, "I can't. Like, I can't." And that was when they were kind of like, "Okay, something is like really wrong." That's kind of going on with him. And I think the reason, and this is a whole nother rabbit hole, but like trying to also like my parents were gracious, and they just wanted me to not be scared, right? And like I also remember another time where my parents, like I kind of like had OCD or started to have suicidal ideation like all the time, and was afraid I was going to hurt myself or whatever. And my parents were leaving to go to like a church function or something like that, and they were like, "Are you okay to be alone?" And I was like terrified, like that I might do something. And it like became that, like, it just like, luckily I was like, okay, just go. You know what I mean? Like when you resist OCD, it tends to, if you're lucky, kind of flame out, right? A little bit. And that was just I had nobody to relate to. You know what I mean? I had nobody to relate to who was going through the same things. And I, as you're kind of talking about it, this is sort of cathartic for me. Because I'm like, oh, this, Dan gets kind of like what I deal with on a daily basis. And, my wife tries to understand it. She tries to, I'm sure it's annoying for her some of the time. I'm also really hyper vigilant about it with my children, like whether or not it's manifesting or showing up. But I also thought like dealing with mental illness within the church, right, is, it was like, oh, we can heal him, or we can, do this. I grew up in a very evangelical, charismatic kind of setting, and it was like new to people, but there was always this constant like, well, God can heal this, right? And it was like, well, God also gave us doctors. If I, you know what I'm saying? Like, um, so there, there's all this stuff going on as like when you're a teenager and you're dealing with all this stuff, and you just feel alienated and isolated, right? And what's acceptable to express or what's acceptable to feel, right? I think I was very fortunate that people were trying to understand things for me, like, and they weren't, this is the devil's work, you know what I mean, or something like that. Yeah, but
I actually, yeah, I had an experience where I went to, when I went to church when I was probably, I was like probably 18 or 19. Went to talk to like a counselor there,
Yeah.
and it was just not good. He was like, "You're definitely demon possessed." And
Cool.
I don't know if there's something. The one thing that doesn't really work well when you have just crippling mental issues is now toppling that there's like a spiritual, you know what I mean?
Component.
There's
Yeah.
demons living in your,
Yeah. Yeah.
and
Yeah.
then I think I was subject of being attempted to cast them out. I can't
Right.
probably 20 or 30 times. I even drove up to Toronto. I don't know if you remember, there was a thing called
Yeah.
the Vineyard.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so
I
I
went up
even
there
went up to,
too.
yeah. I was just, man, like maybe someone somewhere can cast these demons out of my head,
Yeah.
And then the weird thing in the end is you realize that the only one that can is you. You
Right.
know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
I feel like not, and I don't think not necessarily demons, but do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And but yeah, that was crazy, man. And then eventually I didn't want to go in medicine, and I caved, and it helped a little bit, but then it quit working, and that's when I found EMDR and stuff. And I think like,
How has EMDR been helpful for you? So
can't explain
EMDR, just for people listening, is like I think it's called eye movement desensitization
reprocessing,
reprocessing.
reprogramming.
Yeah, reprogramming. Yeah.
It was I'd had a friend in the area that had such bad like agoraphobia type issues where if he would go maybe like 20, 30, 40 minutes away from his house, he would get nauseous and occasionally would be sick. And then I ran into him one day, and he had been traveling and all this. And I was like, it blew me away. He was like an anxiety friend. And you know what I mean? I
Yeah.
have like a group of people. Not all of them are necessarily friends, but where you, as a tattooer, especially, someone comes in, you sit down, you start tattooing them. And sometimes you find out you have very similar mental kind of like makeups. And I feel like there's a bonding through that,
Yeah.
with people.
Absolutely.
And well, he said, yeah, man, I met this. He said a friend of his dad had issues. I believe he was like a Vietnam veteran and had like PTSD, and was like, it was really like affecting his life. And he had went to do this first and saw a bunch of success. And then my friend had seen his friend's dad. So he tried it. And I was very skeptical, and I went in, and the guy was very interesting. He was a very like Freud looking guy, very like feet up on the desk, and he would swear when he talked. He was very, he saved my life, man. I'll never forget him. His name is Frank. And he was very like, we're not here to talk about your childhood. We're not here to talk about any of that stuff. We're here to talk about like how you feel now. And the best way I can explain it is he would try to work me up into a state of anxiety a little bit. He would like really try to like, I really want you to put yourself there, what you're feeling physically, mentally. And then first thing he would begin was behind me with these clicks. And I'll never forget it in my life. It was like in my entire life, after he began this process, it was the first time I could not feel anxiety in my entire life. I can't explain it. I smoked cigarettes at the time, and I remember even leaving, and I like went to put a cigarette in, and I was like, I don't know why, but this is like, so he began with clicks, and then we did some eye movement. Like, I forget what they call it when you follow, like,
yeah, with the, like the,
yes.
Yeah, that. Or,
and then it was some, and then it was like some tapping on the knees and stuff.
Yep.
I noticed that the clicks did the most for me, and then the movement did the second most. And it was like, for that time, I couldn't feel anything. And then for maybe a few days later, I felt great. And then it would creep back in, but not as extreme as it was in the first place. And I maybe only went 6 or 7 times. And it really and then I felt strong enough to get off medicine and stuff. And then now I feel like I had to do a lot of upkeep work, which is everything from, and not all of this did I do right away. Some of it's like over the years, but I realized like diet. I got into meditating, you know what I mean? And just breathing and things like that. And just have like certain things in life having to have I had to be realistic about myself. I can't take too much on, you know what I mean? Like
Yeah,
little things.
100%.
So I just started to work, and then I found, and this is like outside of EMDR, I thought what helped me the most was just learning about what was happening to me
Hmm.
from like a medical standpoint, because
Yeah.
it takes a lot of the fear out. We used to say it takes the claws and teeth away. It's like,
Yeah.
okay, my body just dumped a bunch of adrenaline into my system for no
Hmm.
reason. You know what I mean? Okay, I'm gonna try not to push it away or feed into it. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? And just learning.
100%.
That was the other biggest thing, was just, so I guess if people listen to this or whatever and go through, I encourage people to try to learn as much about what's happening to you in a medical, scientific way as
Right.
possible.
Right.
I feel like you can begin to feel the triggers even, or feel I'm not saying it makes it whatever, but it definitely,
It helps. Yeah.
it helps a lot.
Yeah. Education, psychoeducation, those different things. There's a program, not a program really. There's a book called The Dare Method. And it's not a lot of people know about it, but like it's based off somebody called Claire Weeks, who was back in the 40s or 50s. She kind of developed this system and helped hundreds. She was a primary care provider, and she had gone through panic attacks and all this stuff. And you know, she kind of developed this system. It's a really interesting book of both education, but also like acceptance, and then running towards like whatever is making you anxious, and then redirecting yourself. And it's funny, when I felt panic start to creep into that adrenaline dump, there was a lot of times where one of the things that's really scary is that they say, like, ask for more. Like, don't challenge it, but ask it for more. Like, make my heart beat as fast as you can. If you're going to kill me, let's do it. You know what I mean? Like let's. And what I would find is, as soon as I did that, all of it would start to come down, because you can't make yourself have a panic attack. It's and a lot of people have found a lot of help through this, but it had on this app, like, and in the book, like, every physical symptom that's going on, right? And then like an explanation of it. And it was helpful. Doesn't make it any
Yeah.
less comfortable when it's going on, but anxiety is like an epidemic, like you don't realize how many people are actually going through it. So I deal with a lot of physical symptoms, and that is, I used to, in my head worry, but the physical symptoms, you become afraid of the physical symptoms that are kind of going on. Like, I know Aaron from Under Oath has like health anxiety and all these different things. But I mean, kind of to the point of what you were saying, yeah, it's that adrenaline dump, right? And it's like you can kind of understand it. And they always say, like, you don't have to like it, but if you understand that it's not going to hurt you, it's not you're safe. Like, it's not going to kill you if it's uncomfortable. It's very uncomfortable, but it will go away, and it's more based on the fear of fear, right? And the fear of, like, first you have an initial fear where that's a worry or something like that, and then it's like, oh my God, what's going on? I feel this adrenaline, like my heart is pumping too much, and like I feel tight, and it becomes the fear of fear a lot of times, And so, I mean, I just kind of like, what you're saying makes a lot of sense. And it's kind of funny just going through this. Like I said, I'm like, this is this is my guy. Like, he understands, like, there's something that's so cathartic about that,
Yeah, I always enjoy it too. It's funny because, like, had I not whatever, the idea of therapy was always interesting to me, just as a, you know what I mean? Just because I got older, met some people that were younger, starting to go through stuff, and it always was, always made me feel good to be able to, like, talk to someone and help them out a little bit. You know what I mean? Just having experience.
Yeah.
And the guy I was going to say, the EMDR guy. I just wanted to. I mean,
Yes, absolutely.
he's got to be really old. His name is Frank Colosimo.
Okay.
I just wanted to say his name. He was awesome, man. He helped me out. He was like he like worked with me on like a sliding scale. I
Yeah.
remember he used to volunteer and do it for free one day a week. He was the first person I met that was like involved with this, that I was like, this guy really just wants to see people get better.
Yeah.
Like, do you know what I mean? And it
Yeah.
was like really cool to me to meet somebody, especially in the like medical profession, that really impressed upon me that he wanted to help people. And he
Yeah.
helped me.
Yeah.
And then the first book that ever helped me, and it was older, it was from the 60s or 70s. It was called I want to definitely gonna check out that. I never read the one you were talking about. Now I'm interested, but it was called Hope and Help for Your Nerves.
That's Claire Weeks.
Yes. Yeah, she
Yeah.
was a housewife. Like, yeah.
Yep.
That book helped me out so much because she would talk about her specific way she would feel. But that's awesome that it's the same
Yeah.
person.
Yep. the same
I
person.
forget how I even heard of that book, but I remember I read it and was like, I think I got it right after I met the woman who, when I called her on the phone and she was
Mhm.
like, yeah, come on in. You have anxiety. I can't remember if she recommended it or not. I still have it. It looks like it's old. It looks like it's
Yep,
coffee
super
stained and like it
Yeah.
smells weird. You know what I mean? Just because
Yeah.
it's so old. It
Yeah.
has that like old bookstore smell. But
Yeah.
that was the first book I ever read that I thought she did a great job of like breaking down everything and just explaining it well. And that's crazy. It's small,
so
you know.
it's so funny, just because like some of the things that I remember her saying is like, so what, your hands are shaking, they're still good hands, you know what I mean? They're
Yeah.
still good hands I heard an interview with her one time, and they asked her like, do you still have panic attacks? She's like, yeah, I still wake up with panic attacks, but like I don't care, doesn't mean any, like it's just adrenaline, you know. I don't really care. And she's like, don't feel sorry for me, like I've accepted it, that it happens, you know, and I can live my life just as well, you know. But I'll let you, like, I will email you or whatever that book,
Yeah.
or text you
Thank
that
you.
book, because I think it is really helpful. They have a great app too.
Oh,
about
nice.
it.
I see. I'm starting to think maybe in Hope and Help for Your Nerves, she briefly touches on that, like maybe where it's like a paragraph or a chapter, but definitely didn't have like it in its own book. I remember she had like a system, like you know what I mean?
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
what have you.
Float, she would call it, like floating
Yes,
through
yes.
anxiety. Yeah.
And what was I gonna? But yeah, no, that was but yeah, it's crazy that she was very helpful. She was like, I remember telling everyone like that I would meet, especially back then, like you gotta go to Barnes and Nobles and see if you can find a copy of this book, you know?
Yeah.
And then what you were saying about the fear stuff is like with the ZAO stuff, with a lot of the past records, I actually became obsessed with not fear, but just the whole psychology of it.
Yeah.
Because it's such like having panic attacks and having these like feelings of deep fear without there being a cause to it.
Right.
Like how I used to try to explain panic attacks to my friends is I was like, imagine if you were driving and you had something in your trunk, like a dead body or drugs or something, and then you saw police lights pop in your rearview mirror.
Right.
I was like, that feeling that would wash over you washes over me for no reason.
Right. Exactly.
You know?
Yeah.
And then I feel like maybe even you tend to attach things, like if it's raining or if you're doing a certain thing and you feel that, your brain wants to connect that feeling to like some sort of source. And
Right.
I feel like that's almost when you get into like neuroses and, phobias and things like that.
Yeah, absolutely. 100%. Because your amygdala is the thing that is not, it's not controllable, right? It's that like lizard brain that like, you know, in evolutionary times, that was the panic response was like, okay, you're ready to go, right? Like we're not going to be eaten by a tiger, but that response is still there. And I think a lot of anxiety and intense anxiety is trauma that is lived in the body. And I think what you were kind of talking, I know that EMDR itself a lot of times deals with traumatic memories, and then helps the brain reprocess that, or reprocess the response to it. And I think it lives in our nervous system. You know what I mean? Like our nervous system, some of us are more prone to having a heightened nervous system, and trauma doesn't mean war, or it doesn't mean like all these, even physical violence or any of those things. Like, oh, trauma can be emotional. It can be um, a lot of different things. There's a book called The Body Keeps the Score, and it's about trauma and how trauma lives in our body. And kind of like what you were talking about, there's something called somatic experiencing, where you kind of reconnect with your body. And I always thought this about like just looking at some of your performances and things like that catharsis. I when you meditate, I don't know if you make sound or vibration, but and I'm sure when you're playing too, there's a vibration that's kind of going on. That vibration can stimulate your polyvagal nerve in here, which does, what does it do? It does it helps calm the fight or flight response. And so
that's interesting.
Part of my, and that's what breathing does too. When I do my morning type of thing, I take a shower and then I do 30 seconds of cold water, which stimulates my polyvagal nervous system and it resets it. And then I'll do breathing, and then I'll do something that's called vooing, which is just you make like a V noise, like, and it stimulates the polyvagal nerve, and you can feel yourself just kind of calm down, And another really good doctor, psychologist, his name is Peter Levine, and he has a book called like Awakening the Tiger, and it's all about movement and processing the fear response. And I think about what is it that's so cool about the pit. Is not only the community experience and the community experience that music brings, because there's a lot of trauma in different cultures where the experience of music and playing music and having a group and community helps process that trauma. And also the movement within the pit, or that kind of catharsis of like moving your body. And also, I've said this before, there's a weird safety sometimes within the pit that if you fall down, somebody's going to pick you back up. And like, hopefully that tends to be the case
Most of the time.
right? Yeah. But I think it's an amazing metaphor that when you are going through anxiety or you're going through trauma, that like isolation is a huge thing, right? And so the metaphor of like, if I fall down, somebody's going to help me back up, right? When you're steeped in depression, when you're steeped in anxiety, you don't need somebody to necessarily show you the way. You need somebody to kind of get down in the dirt with you. And like, I've experienced this, like, we'll do this together, right? We won't do this separately. And I think, ZAO definitely creates some sort of experience for people, some sort of catharsis, and the whole community is huge. Community is huge within trauma and anxiety and helping process some of that stuff. So like, I guess I'm curious for you, because what I see a lot of times is that people who deal with extreme social anxiety or any of those things, like, it's amazing to other people that they can get up and perform, right? But for somebody like me, I could almost like easily do that. I felt more comfortable and more alive on a stage. Would I get butterflies? Sure. But there was some sort of catharsis about that. And I kind of wonder, how you were able to do that, or what your experience was like.
It was hard for me. It still is. Not in the very beginning, very, very beginning, but like, I mean, for a long time, I had to drink a little bit, unfortunately, and probably for the last, not in the very, very beginning, first maybe 2 or 3 years, but definitely whenever. It was just, I feel like I just gave into it just made a little part of my life easier. And maybe now for, I don't know, maybe for the past 5 or 6 years, I've played without having any type of, you know what I mean, anything.
That's amazing.
And I'm able to lean into it a little bit more. And what was weird is like it was always the transition from not being on stage to being on stage, just the, like initial getting up what was hard. I feel like once it starts, it's okay.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But
absolutely.
it's that like 5 minutes before, or
Yeah.
you know what I mean?
Oh yeah.
That was really hard for me. And that's what I learned through like doing it without drinking. Uh and like I said, it wasn't always like getting drunk. Sometimes it was, you know what I mean? But sometimes it was just having I remember like prior to quitting drinking at all before playing, I would allow myself one drink per band before us. You know what I mean? So I would just have
Cool.
like,
Yeah.
and it was usually like three,
Yeah.
2 or 3. So it wasn't, and then I would, and then prior to that, I mean, I definitely had um, before I settled down and stuff, I definitely had a bit of an issue for a little bit. Not, I mean, I was functioning, you know what I mean? But I
Yeah.
was just, what have you. I mean, that's how I learned to cope with things a lot when I was young. Like once again, I didn't tend to like lash out or reach out. I was very like internal, you know
Yeah.
what I mean?
Yeah.
I would like, I'd like to be social and drink, but I also like to drink alone a lot. And that was actually before I stopped my favorite. I got to the point where I didn't even want to drink with people. Like, you know what I mean? Like I
Yeah.
just wanted to like sit in the dark and listen to music. And
Yeah.
like I was okay if my dog wanted to hang out, you know what
Yeah.
I mean?
Yeah.
Like he would just like kind of just like lay there and sleep or whatever. And I was like, this is all I really whatever. And I got into other stuff too. Fortunately never too deep or for too long. But um it's I don't know. I
Well,
that's
alcohol works on the same receptors that like Xanax does,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
And yeah, quells that kind of GABA response in the brain, you know.
And I'm a very 180, like very like a OCD and whatever. And if alcohol makes it all shut off, and that therein lies the you know what I mean? Therein lies the
The
danger.
danger. Yeah. Yeah.
And then the main reason I quit drinking, I don't drink at all anymore. I had like it's funny because like in the last January, I did a shot one day with a after I finished a sleeve on someone, the guy really went, I'll take it, let's do a shot. This is a big project. And I was kind of like, I feel like I'm done drinking, but whatever, you know what I mean? If it means something to this guy, that's cool, you know? And then I used to be real into beer. Like
Me too.
used to like travel around. Like I
Going to
won the
Europe.
yeah, I won the assassin lottery once, the
Oh yeah.
stout from toppling Goliath, and I flew out, to Iowa to buy
Yeah.
2 bottles of beer. Luckily my wife stayed with me. I'm just kidding. You know what I mean? But I used to go around, and I mean, I made a lot of friends, and I definitely enjoyed the culture for a while. You know what I mean? Made a lot of cool friends, met a lot of cool people. Was just like hang out with some places in the city before. It's like cool to look back when they were
Yeah.
small. I worked for a brewery for a long time doing labels. They shut down about like a year and a half ago, but definitely cool. But what really like started creeping in that made me stop was the rebound anxiety.
Yeah.
It's like, very alchemy. It's like, if I'm going to feel good for a few hours today, like I'm going to pay for that.
Yeah.
That just doesn't come for free. You
Right.
know what I mean? And it started being like, I could only drink if I had nothing to do the next day, because if I had something important to do, or like if
Right.
I had something that involved a lot of steps, like say going to the airport or something, I got to get in my car and make sure I have this pack, get there. That was like too much for me to deal with
Yeah.
like rebound anxiety.
Yeah.
It's just too many. I feel like being anxious, I always am in the future, which I try not to be, but I'm always like living in tomorrow, going through the 90 steps that I'm going to, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And getting anxious about it. So then I just, and my biggest fear was like, I never wanted my rebound anxiety to come back negatively on my family.
What coping mechanisms do you have now? Like what rituals? Like something for me is I always listen to Vince Guaraldi in the morning, and kind of some of that bossa nova type of stuff that just kind of like, when I was at the peak of some of my anxiety stuff, was just kind of like a ritual for me that just kind of kept me a little bit calmer, you know?
Yeah, I'll get into something here in a minute where I'm just gonna bum a lot of people out, but uh so I either listen to lectures in the morning.
Okay.
Um I like Alan Watts a lot, especially just his voice, like the old tape sound, like
Yeah.
stuff like old tapes from the 60s and 70s. And I listen to another guy named Ram Dass, Richard Alpert. He's like both kind of like similar. It's like what have you. And then there's a Japanese band I really like.
I
They're
think you
called
sent me them.
Kikugaku Moyo, and then Moyo Gaku. And then so this is where I'm gonna really start bumming people out. Especially I've liked this band my entire life, and the older I get the more I listen to them because of all the bands that exist. They kind of keep me in the best mental state, if that makes any sense.
Sure. Yeah.
But I listen to the Grateful Dead a lot, man. That's like my like. So the only two bands that I ever really found that like would relax me a lot was Grateful Dead and Morrissey, actually, and
Yeah.
like the
Oh, wow.
Smiths. There were
Yeah.
like two of my like whatever. And but yeah, that's like and that's what I meant by when I was saying by like I go out of my way to listen to stuff more that keeps me in like a good spot. But yeah, I know it's funny. People are like, oh man, it's kind of a bummer. But I'm also open about it. I don't lie about it. You know what I mean? And they're not somebody where I'm gonna sit here and try to convince you to like them or anything.
Right.
There's just something I have a lot of ties to. It has to do with some lyrical stuff and some whatever, but I find it very so a lot of mornings I wake up and it's I either like I'll come into work, I like run my kids around, and then I'll get into here, and I usually have like an hour and a half before people show up, and I just either listen to lectures or some type of music, one of the two, just either like really overly calm stuff or something like that that reminds me of little things. I don't know, you know what I mean? I have
Yeah.
these little bookmarks in different bands.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But that's like a big, and I almost lean into like speaking stuff more in the morning. I don't know why. I just like to listen to just like a calm voice. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? And a lot of those old tapes, you can have a crowd, and there's always a baby that cries every once in a while. And you can hear rustling and cars honking. It's very like organic sounding to me. I don't know. It's weird, calming, I guess, maybe because it's so normalized, just such a normal sounding thing. You know what I mean? I
Yeah.
don't know.
I think it's so cool. It's so funny
But yeah,
because like we need that, but like ZAO's music is so sonically like in your face and in your ears. I'm curious, like how did you find that you could scream like that?
Just kind of doing backups in a band. So I was in the band I was in before ZAO was called Seasons in the Field, and what happened was I was doing backups. I played bass and would sing backups occasionally, and we weren't signed, so we were paying for our own studio time, and it was it was nothing back then, but it was also expensive to us. So what it was when we would go into the studio and pay for it ourselves, we were trying to be very, very like efficient, because it was like we were trying not to spend a dime more than we had to. And we were recording on DAT tape. I remember we had to like buy our own DATs, bring them in, and then like we'd start recording it. We used to record a lot at this place called Gamut. Recorded a bunch of cool stuff around here. It was like Passover, Creation's Crucifixion, some of it like better. But I had this we were all like, myself and Russ was in that band, and Steve, who actually played drums on Funeral God, and then a guy named Jason sang, and we all knew we were prepared, but we weren't sure if Jason was prepared. So me being the OCD whatever person that couldn't quit thinking about it, I, just in case, wrote lyrics to and arranged vocally for every song we were recording.
Oh, okay.
And then he came in and I said, "Hey, you're ready?" And he was like, "No." And I was like, well, good thing that I wrote and whatever. So pretty much what I did is, to save time, I recorded all the vocals and pretty much said, just do your thing over top of mine. Like, do you know what I mean? I gave you the guideline. Here's the lyrics. All you have to do is kind of like go along with it. And it was in that process where some people are like, I really like, you know what I mean? I really like that style or whatever. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then it was just what came the easiest and most naturally for me. It wasn't like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then it was nervous because I technically tried out for ZAO. Like I went to a tryout. Brett Detter was joined first. So it was Jesse and Brett. Those were like the new
guys.
like that was like at the time that was the new foundation, was those two. And one or two people tried out ahead of me, and then I mean I kind of got to try out because I at that point we had played with like the All Else Failed Splinter Shard lineup of ZAO a good bit. They were from West Virginia, we were from Pittsburgh. We, you know, Ohio show, yeah, we can play that. Maryland show, yeah, we can play that. But I did have to try out. And then the funny part is it like went good and all that. And, you know, in hindsight, a lot of the guys were like, yeah, man, when we went to do Blood and Fire and they left when I did my vocal stuff, they were like, we were kind of scared. Like when we came back in and like they're about to hit play for the first time, you know what I mean? I was like, I mean, I was a little bit too, you know, it was like big shoes to fill, and I was filling shoes, but in like an completely opposite way, you know, like my vocal style was a lot different than Sean's and things like that. And like, not that whatever, it's just is what, you know, apples and oranges kind of deal. And but yeah, no, it was just like, so it was kind of like, at first it was just backup vocals, just like yelling. And I was also influenced, a lot of the bands that I was heavily influenced by at the time kind of had that more vocal style, like Abnegation, The Puritan, Creation's Crucifixion. I really like this band called Iron Monkey, but it's a lot of the bands I liked that they were from Europe, but a lot of those other bands were quasi-local. The Puritan was from like Penn State, Abnegation was from like Erie, but so it was a mix of like, it came a little bit naturally to me, and a mix of that's what people that I really liked at the time were doing, that more like higher pitched, as opposed to the like more like lower barking type vocals, you know?
Yeah. How did you take care of your voice?
I didn't. It's like one of those things where like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like I was lucky in a sense that it's funny, man, because I just did it. I don't know if that makes any sense.
No,
like,
I mean, a lot of people that I talk to or do it. Yeah, there's no like, I learned this technique. It was like,
no, it's funny now because all these like screaming coaches,
yeah,
and you know what I mean, and things like that, and which is whatever. It's not this or that, but no, there was no like. I remember I took some general things from people that could sing, like try to breathe through your diaphragm, and you know what I mean, and things like that. But outside of that, I just did it. And there was actually a point in my like early mid 40s where I started thinking about it too much and almost had to like figure it out. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I was like, I just did it. What did I do?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It was like really, I mean, not to be, I feel like it's crazy to me. Like, I mean, I'll see stuff on like Instagram or YouTube where people are like, I put this here and then I open this up and I can do this, this, and this. I was like, I don't know.
Yeah.
It's impressive. It's impressive to me. Do you know what I mean? Like, in a sense, like, man, that's really cool that like you have such control and understanding on how you do it. Almost like, not like jealous, but like, I'm like, I've always just,
I would assume that some of it has to do with just like longevity of the vocal cords, right? Just trying to keep, you know, a technique so that it just doesn't like blow out, you know, at some point, you know.
And I always knew if I was screaming too hard or things, like if I feel my shoulders tense up, I knew to relax and like, you know, things like that, and try to project from farther down as opposed to like in the top of the throat, you know what I mean? But I still didn't understand the intricate parts of what I was doing, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I can honestly say there's still probably little elements that I still don't, you know what I mean? It's funny because like we don't do much in the winter, partially just because where we live, it's like, don't want to like, especially in like January, February, March, commit to shows and then, you know, have some crazy snow. Or I've known over the years a lot of people that have had bad accidents, and, you know, we started to really take the driving around in the snow seriously, as far as touring, whatever. And had a lot of close calls personally as a band, and you know, other bands and so on and so forth. But we'll get together to practice, and it's always those first couple. I'm like, why isn't it doing the thing? You know, I'm just kidding. Yeah. And then it's like, oh, there it is, cool. You know, after a couple songs.
You know, you mentioned something about having big shoes to fill, and I was just kind of wondering what it was like to get into a fight with Jesse about some Star Creepers.
Yeah, that's funny because I used to. It's weird because I always when I look back at those times, the first thing that comes to mind is that we were kids.
Mhm.
You know what I mean? It's like, and we were all acting like kids. Do you know what I mean? It's
Yeah.
like, so I don't really harbor any whatever, but yeah, no, man, it would be. And I know he's done a lot with himself recently, and you know what I mean? I feel like he was able in the past couple years to really do well for himself, like personally.
What was it about
And
the Star Creepers though that just really?
it was just like I don't know, man. They were like, it was like when I first got into ZAO, they had been out to California before, you know what I mean? And I feel like that was just like, it was this cool thing that was part of this like West Coast etiquette, you know what I mean?
Mhm.
Like this like style, not etiquette, but like style. You know what I mean? And I don't know if you remember, but back then, if you look at around the time I joined ZAO, like around when Splinter Shards came out, like there was a lot of like rockabilly, like
Well,
kind of like stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's Brett, but I don't remember like Overcome at one point.
Okay.
Like everyone in that band was like super rockabilly, and then there was like Swing Kids and like a
Yeah.
little bit of the Unbroken thing, and you know what I mean. So the Creepers, man, like you didn't ever see them out here, and I was whatever. So I was like, can I wear them? Can I wear them? You know what I mean? And then he let me wear them, and then get mad I was wearing them. You know what I mean, or whatever. But it was just like that was like the you know, at the time, things like that were just like these crazy, you know, prior to like social media and stuff, these weird little things that were like, I've never seen these until I went to California, or like never saw people wearing things like that, you know?
Has anybody ever asked you about the Star Creepers?
And I'm sure, just here and there, but yeah, it's a good one though.
You know how I found out about that?
I never owned a pair. How?
I Brett's my friend on TikTok, so we've messaged back and forth a couple of times. I don't know him. I just, you know, and I said, what is something that I can like reference for Dan that he might be like, how did you know about that? So he told me, sent me a voice message.
Yeah, so Jesse had a. Yeah, I was like trying to think. I'm like, did we talk about that in something? But no, those were just like he owned them, and we wore the same size. And I was just like infatuated them, and I didn't have enough money to buy my own. You know what I mean? I forget the name of the store. We used to always go to a store in Southern California, and you could buy them there. And I would just be like, so I was always bug him to wear them. Or I remember him maybe not wearing them for a few days, and then, you know, one day I was wearing them, and then he kind of was like, I want to wear them, and I was like, you said I could, you know. And it was very like, and I got really upset because I was like, I hadn't had much time with them yet. You know what I mean? Yeah, but it was yeah, like I said, it was just like a very Californian, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
In essence, it was like, or it was like the final rockabilly like thing you couldn't procure around here, where like,
Right.
you know, leather platform shoes. The Star Creepers you didn't see a lot. Those were nice. You know what I mean? I think in the first, I can't remember if I was wearing them in the first ZAO promo or not. I feel like he would let me wear them every once in a while. You know what I mean? But
The way that Brett kind of remembers is, what did he say? He was like, Dan just loved these Star Creepers, and like he would borrow them from Jesse, and I guess he borrowed them a little bit too much, and they got into a fight about it.
Yeah. It was I haven't thought about that in a long time. That's a good one. So I have to give Brett, you know, that's definitely a good, you know. I think in the original Blood and Fire promo I might be wearing them. Can't remember. One of us is, or maybe he was. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
In the promo for that, I remember his hair was down and he had on more of like not a turtleneck, but like I feel like one of those like sweaters that would zip up.
Yeah.
Sorry, my recall, whatever, is terrible.
I just wanted to ask, I don't want to, you know, take too much of your time. Do you have clients come in today?
Nah, I don't even know it. Sorry, I can't. I got a clock weather. Yeah, I might have to wrap up in a minute.
Yeah.
In a little bit, just because actually I leave for the city. It's like just after 3 here, but at 4. So I'll run home and do a few things and take my daughter. She has a class tonight. So.
Oh, cool. So I just wanted to know, and this is a question I kind of ask kind of frequently, like if you were to give some advice to your like 20-year-old self, what would you want them to know, or what would you want him to, what kind of advice would you give to him?
First off, I think when I was that age, I didn't feel like I was damaged. You know what I mean? Or like anything. I felt like all these terrible things have happened to me, but they didn't affect me.
Yeah.
And I was very wrong.
Yeah.
You know? First thing I would tell myself is that, yes, you're not worse off than you think, but you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Those things did affect you. Not to lean into the substances. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that just to continue to educate myself and do all the little things that you think. I remember, you know, going to all these anxiety things to talk about breathing. And I don't think I ever did it till I got older. You know what I mean? Then like, wow, this really works. You know what I mean? I just always thought like, that's too easy. It doesn't work. That wouldn't work on me. You know what I mean? And that, you know, and then not to look outside of myself, you know, in the sense of not to seek help, to allow myself to educate myself and turn inward and work on myself, as opposed to looking for all the answers outside of myself, I guess, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then to, I guess, be open about things and not surround yourself, but be sure to have some sort of some people that you can talk to. I'm fortunate to have enough friends that have similar places that I have to talk to regularly that are very helpful.
Yeah.
You know, and that, you know, kind of to be, I don't know. And then there's stuff I know I couldn't tell myself, like, just relax a little bit more. Like, I'd have been like, shut up, man. You know what I mean? It's like,
one of the things that I really wanted to accomplish with the podcast was that people hearing other people's stories about, you know, even just people like, there's a lot of people who listen to ZAO and they might be going through something or have gone through something that you're going through. And to be able to look and be like, well, Dan struggles with this. Like, even through this conversation, it's been I hate to say this word, but like, it's been a real blessing for me just to feel that connection, you know what I mean, to somebody. And it, you know, if somebody can kind of like hear this and find some hope or just find some kind of connectivity instead of feeling so isolated, you know, that would be the hope, you know. I was talking with Chad Johnson
nice.
about last, you know, and everybody says he's the most positive guy that they kind of know, but he was talking about how last year was the worst year of his life and how he was dealing with suicidal ideation and all these different things. And I was like, if somebody can hear that and know that Chad is a very positive person and that like we all hit low points, you know, that might touch somebody in some way, you know? So I'm actually really thankful that we didn't talk a lot about ZAO stuff, because I think this is more important, you know?
This is what I like to talk about.
But yeah, I will let you go. All right.
Thank you.
Thanks, Dan.
Have a great day.
Yeah, you too.
That does it for the show. I'd like to thank Dan again for coming on and being so open and honest. 2 of the books that have helped both Dan and I with severe anxiety were mentioned in the podcast. If you suffer from panic attacks or severe anxiety, check out the books Hope and Help for Your Nerves by Dr. Claire Weeks and The DARE Method by Barry McDonough. If you are looking for support in a peer way, please feel free to DM me on Instagram at Safe and Sound Podcast. Thanks for listening, and I'll see you next interview.